We've never seen crypto go through a recession before, like we never had the 2008 thing. Bitcoin was kind of born after that. So we never saw how that goes. So this will be the first time we see that. But in the 2020 crash, there was that day that they dropped 50%. That was nuts. So I am a little worried that if the stock market takes a hit, it'll hurt crypto too. But we are also nearing that halving period, right? That's supposed to kick off in about 2 months, 6 months before the halving. Things get bullish. We're only 2 months away, and we're on October. So who knows? It's like,
I personally seem to think that the whole October thing is just like a very short term increase because people know that in October, traditionally, like the last 8 out of 10 years, I believe, we were in a positive. And traditionally, September was kind of a down month. And so you can almost sense it with the people that I talk to working in security and looking at doing a security audit who's not. You'd be surprised with how many people, as soon as the market just becomes a little bit more bullish, everybody starts coming out and they're, all right, we need to
for
do an
sure.
audit. So everything is so time sensitive. So it's like feast or famine sometimes.
It's just,
Everyone's paying attention to what the market is doing, even though they say they don't, right? They say, oh, we're still building, but they're definitely in tune with what's happening in the market.
100%. I always think of a time that comes to mind for me is a great example is early 2017. Coming out of 2016 was kind of like now. It's just like there was no movement really and things were kind of stagnant. And then 2017 rolled around. Ethereum was $7 at the time. I did an interview with someone in December 2016. This was like back then there weren't as many people in ETH. So he was like a Bitcoin maxi and like was a hater on ETH. He's like, oh, he's gonna die. Da, da. And I'm like, is it possible for you to foresee things like decentralized exchanges? I had a vision of decentralized exchanges long before they came, and then lo and behold, now Uniswap's the big thing. We didn't know what it looked like back then, but then in 2017, ETH went from that $7, and just in a couple months, it was at like 200-300 bucks, like that. Just like you're just, it's crazy, man. Time time is crazy with crypto. It's I was thinking about that the other day, just what a like most businesses, kind of like inch their way up, gradually more business. Oh, you added a new store, da da da. No, crypto's like exactly feast or famine. It's like dead and then in the sky
Mhm.
and then down. It's just yeah, totally. It's
Yeah,
crazy to
I
see.
think the next move up or down, it's going to be very volatile just because we've been going sideways for such a long time now, and this is the longest bear market that we've had to date, and probably likely because of what you mentioned that this is the first time we're in crypto during a quote unquote recession, although I know that Capitol Hill doesn't want to call it that, right?
Yeah, yeah. They don't want to call it that, but we're definitely in a recession.
You mentioned something earlier. You said that you were having a conversation with a Bitcoin maxi, and that seems to be your thing, isn't it? Because literally like 3 days ago, it wasn't just Bitcoin maxis, but you did a Twitter space, which I thought was very informative, with John, I believe,
Yeah,
former SEC. Um,
CC Office of Internet Enforcement, the chief of
there
that.
you
It was a
go.
pretty impressive, position he had there.
Yeah, and that was pretty cool to see that you were on there and advocating for not just crypto, but like Web3, because there were some folks there that were about Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is not really on the hot seat as much right now, right? As like some of the other chains, like you mentioned Ethereum, and obviously with what you're building. And look, I get it because there's so many exploits and crimes that are happening. I mean, I deal with it on a day-to-day basis, right, within my industry. So, I mean, how was that experience like for you? Like, do you enjoy being on the hot seat like that when everyone's pretty much against you?
That's a fun question. And I'd say you have to be confident when you're going to be in a hot seat like that. And you have to really come from the heart, again, like I come from a place of love. I understand and I understand where he's coming from because they're really there is so much crime, man. And actually, there was a couple more things I wanted to say on that spaces, but it's like there's these two polarities. He's on one side where they're like hating crypto because of the crime, right? And that's how the SEC is looking at things. He's kind of like how the SEC looks at it. It's just all crime. People come in, they saved up for 30 years, they lost all their money. Like that's how he's viewing it, right? And on the other side, I have people when I tell them about, hey, we can have governance, we can protect users, I get a lot of pushback from the other side that they don't. It's I think it's because this side has experienced so much pain from the traditional system that they don't want to even entertain anything that looks anything like it. But the middle ground's actually the correct way. And you basically a lot of problems come from people not understanding what decentralization means. Decentralization means a network that can't be shut down. I got to repeat this all over for people to get it because people hear the word decentralization and they think it means there's no controls, it's the wild, wild west. That's not true. Decentralization means a network that can't be shut down. You can have law enforcement on that network, which you should, this is the future. You can't have a blockchain without law enforcement and expect to bring your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother who don't know anything about it. They're like sitting ducks for these scammers, you know? And the scammers are better than ever. So I got on there and they want to just shut down fiat on ramps for US investors. That's messed up. We're in the land of the free. We're supposed to have more access to stuff than anybody in the world, right? And there, if like in the land of the free, we most certainly deserve access to the fastest growing asset class in the world. We deserve that. So you can't shut us out of it. So you don't. So that's not the solution. The solution is bring some law enforcement on the blockchain level. And when you bring in law enforcement, the scammers disappear because they know they can't get away with it. Just like crime in the normal world. Once there's a police department, they know they can't get away with it. They stop doing it. You know, that's how it goes.
One thing that I enjoy pushing back on and just challenging some of the people in my network that I personally just love, and they're brilliant when they advocate for decentralization. What I find working in the cybersecurity space is that very rarely do you have something fully decentralized. I mean, you even look at a smart contract. There's really three ways to like fully decentralize a smart contract. You know, you can set up a time lock, you can, you know, set up a multi-signature wallet, you can renounce your privileges to a DAO, which is probably I've mentioned this before, probably the hardest thing to do for a crypto project is to fully renounce all the privileges. Because at the
It's
end of the day,
risky.
you're
You
running a
might need it.
business, right?
Yeah,
So the question is, how decentralized do you really need to be in order to be fully decentralized? Are we just marketing ourselves as fully decentralized when we're really not?
for sure. And it's a huge point that there needs to be more conversation and understanding what is decentralization? I run into it often that as soon as you say the word governance, oh, you can freeze a bad actor. Oh, so it's not decentralized. It's like, I've run into this a lot, and what it tells me is that we need more conversations and education around decentralization. And this is the analogy I always use. Okay, so when we were kids, like I used Napster, right? And, those were the days. And then we used torrents too, And then they made it illegal to use Napster and they could shut it down. They went and they shut down the servers. And then Napster was over. But torrents, they could never shut down. And you can still use torrents today. And the reason why that is because of the technology. The technology is peer-to-peer. It's all over the world. You can't go to anybody and shut it down. So this is what we have to understand about blockchain tech is when people say decentralized, what you need is whatever you build, it needs to not be able to be shut down. You can't have someone come and say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, we don't like your network, we don't like your project, you got to shut it down. If someone came to me and said that about my project, I'd be like, I'm sorry, I can't. Because I didn't build those controls in. I don't have the control, I don't have the ability to shut the network down. Nobody does. So that's the key part. You have to build something that no outsider can come and shut down. Now, once you have that, you can have governance within there. Like, again, the governance does not allow the network to be shut down, but it does allow, hey, there's a bad actor, we can freeze him. We can take those assets back. We can do votes. We can do this. That's permissible. And this is kind of next level. And it's kind of, some people hear it and they haven't gone there mentally. I see that. But this is where we need to go, because until we go there, we've seen every year just things are getting worse, man. The crime is worse every year. The sophistication of scams is increasing every year. And I feel bad for new people getting into blockchain, you know?
The whole part about not being controllable scares people because people are used to traditional businesses, and the market decides whether or not they get to stay in business, right? And so when you have something that's not controllable and you don't necessarily have a government or just a central authority regulating it, that's what scares most people that are not as acclimated with blockchain technology. John was nice enough to have you on because he's wanting to learn, he's open to learning. And I think that us on this side that are advocating for decentralization, I think we also need to be open to listening. So question I have for you, Tommy, is there anything that you feel like you learned being on that Twitter space with John and the rest of the panelists?
Um, it's just it's just seeing kind of how they're looking at it, which again, their avenue is saying to shut out US investors. And that was what I wanted to talk to him about, is like, it's not right. Bitcoin went up 1,000,000 times between 2009 and 2013. I got into crypto in the pursuit of the best investments in the world way back in 2013. That's why I got in. That's how it got on my radar in 2012, because I saw an article that said Bitcoin went up 5,000% in a year. So the avenue that they're taking, it just isn't. I see that. That's what they're trying. And you see Chase today, right? UK Chase shut down people. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to shut down our access to crypto. And that's one takeaway I saw there, that I see that, and I don't think that's right. Um,
I always like to evaluate it from both sides of the coin, so to speak, no pun intended. But in regards to some of the comparisons that were being made on that Twitter space, like FTX, comparing that to some of the chains, I feel like people need a little bit more education in terms of what FTX is. So it was a centralized company. They were regulated, and yet they still did a lot of things wrong. And here we are today.
totally. And to that point, I think regulation isn't a bad thing. Like it can be good. It's you're trying to create a good, safe ground for people to work in, right? But what you have to understand about the nature of crypto is you can't stop people from moving and interacting with others. That's what they really need to understand, is you can't close it off, and I think that's what they're missing.
I look at money laundering, which I think is the biggest concern with crypto that government bodies have. And they're trying to, get even DeFi protocols to maintain a certain level of monitoring, screening, and reporting any kind of bad actors, the ones that are directly or indirectly affiliated with certain crimes, OFAC, you name it. But when I talk to a lot of folks in DeFi, they say, look, we're decentralized. There's really nothing that they can do to stop this. So why do we need to worry about that?
That reminds me, I used to be a big fan of Monero, back in 2016 and stuff. I used to be a big fan of them because I'm a believer in privacy and human rights, right? I'm a big believer in human rights. So I like the right of privacy. However, um, there was an Ether Delta hack which happened in December 2017, and I'd never liked using that exchange. I had to use it because it was the only one that had this coin I bought in with an ICO. So you have to log in that exchange with a private key, and I hated doing that, but I did. I never log in anything with a private key if I can. I try to use a UTC, a JSON file and a password. It's safer to break it up rather than have one thing that someone can capture, which is exactly what happened. So I logged in the website. It was DNS hijacked, meaning these hackers took over the website and you didn't know as a user because it looks exactly the same. So they were capturing the private keys. So I had about $1 million stolen from me there. It was Christmas Day 2017, and the worst time to happen too, because it was right when the bubble was at its peak. I really should have been paying more attention to the status of the market and making plans around that. But instead, I got sucked into this thing, and I worked with Secret Service, and we figured out who it was, right? And then it took a while to get them. You have to do all these things when you're doing pursuing people overseas. There's a lot more extra steps than if they're in the US. We finally caught him. He's in prison right now. I never got my money back. And it's because the guy turned it into Monero, you know, and hid it there. And neither did the Secret Service. They weren't able to recover anything. And that was the day after that happened. I was like, and I really saw there's a lot of shady people kind of there. And so I think we're big believers of privacy and stuff until we see that sometimes criminals are really the ones using these things like Tornado Cash and like Monero. There's a lot more activity in there for that sort of stuff. And my mom made a great point to me even like a long time ago. It's like, how many of us really need to hide what we're doing? Like, we're not doing anything shady, like most of us don't really need to. So privacy, like people bring that privacy thing in, but yes, when you're talking about these decentralized exchanges who don't want to do anything and they're saying we're decentralized, see, even they're failing to understand that decentralization doesn't mean a lack of governance. It means a lack of being able to shut that network down, which maybe they're not decentralized in that way. I don't know. But there can be governance built into it. And ideally built in the protocol. I'm not talking about some admin keys that one person has, because that's not decentralized. So you can go to one person and say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, you have an admin key, do what I say. That's not decentralized. But if there's built into the protocol that you could have a network vote that gets big enough to do something, that is decentralized. So I think that's a key part of it too.
I was at Permissionless in Austin this past month, and I was talking to one of the builders building in the secret network, and really good guy, smart, and we were running an example, and he gave me $1. He said, okay, give that dollar back to me now. And so I gave it back to him. He said, okay, nobody knows that we just did this transaction. In the old days, you would have a barter system, you would exchange assets, and nobody knew about it. And it sounds like for a lot of people that they want to go back to those times, where the government isn't as involved and doesn't know everything that you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think privacy would be great, and we still have those options too. If you really want to be private, you can. But I mean, I've been using blockchain all these years. I don't have anything to hide, like whatever. I do things legally, and that's how. I don't know. You don't have a need for it. I think maybe people's concerns are about taxes, and there is certainly an issue with the tax code in the U.S. of how crypto is treated. That's a whole different issue, But I say just do things legally is good, and then who cares if you're buying an NFT and you don't tell anyone your address, right? You don't have to tell people your address, so it's not necessarily like public, right? They're not like oh, Tommy's doing this or that, unless it's in my wallet, then they can tell. But you have that ability to be private, in terms of like most stuff. I guess it would just be I think it's really an issue of taxes more than anything. It seems like, I don't know.
When you look at something like TikTok and all those disclosures in terms that you have to agree to in order to use the application, like how much of your privacy and freedom are you really giving up? Right?
Yeah.
China is keeping an eye out on us, right? And so I think especially in that sphere, there's definitely a need for privacy. If you're using something for free, you basically are the product, right? That's what they say with a lot of these mainstream platforms, and we continue to use them. So I think until we find a better way on the UX side to do things in a decentralized manner, I mean, we'll continue to use that. It's very difficult to find a solution on that side, I think. What are your thoughts on social
Yeah,
media on blockchain?
that's a really fun topic. When I had the ambition of building a lot of things, which now I realize I'm just focusing on like my core products, learn that one, just focus on the core product, maybe like one or two things. but I used to want to build a decentralized Twitter. But really, what that was about more than anything was about the eliminating censorship. We've certainly seen how that can be abused with a lot of the stuff around COVID and stuff. 2020, 2021, there were a lot of people who were kind of silenced that, I don't think they should have been. Think they should have been able to speak. Some of the stuff that those people say turned out to have more validity than they were given credit for. But so for me, I think that is more about stopping censorship than our privacy. And I think that's a big ethos of crypto. This freedom to money, this freedom. It's about the freedom. I think the freedom is really the crux of what makes it powerful. Privacy is important, but the freedom is the power. And I'm a huge proponent of freedom. I believe we should have as much freedom as possible as long as we're not hurting other people or, impeding, imposing our beliefs or whatever on other people. Then, we should have the freedom to do what we want to do.
But the problem is not everybody can handle that kind of freedom. There's a small percentage of people that embrace it and take advantage of it for the good, that is. But there's also people that don't have the ability to think for themselves, or maybe perhaps they have bad intent. And so for those people that are not as educated, we say, okay, we need to educate people more about blockchain so that way they can avoid scams. Do you feel like we can get to that point? I feel like the easier solution is, hey, let's just create centralized Web3 companies and we'll make it super user friendly. We'll tell you what to do, how to do it. We'll take care of everything for you. We'll hold on to your assets for you. And you can use blockchain all you want. That, unfortunately, is the direction that we're headed because education just takes so much longer.
Well, I think that is how it will end up. But extrapolate what you say, because the decentralized nature, the beautiful thing about it is this blockchain, and people can build all sorts of stuff all over. But within that blockchain, you want those protections where you can have a family member or a newbie come in and not have to worry about crime. Let's use an analogy. We walk down the street. If you live in any decent area, you're not going to worry about someone pulling a gun on you. Obviously, that does exist in some parts of the world and the US, which we should probably improve upon. But I mean, I live in a place, I don't worry about that. That's because we have a reasonable expectation that it's probably going to be safe. So a kid could walk down the street. So we should create that same environment in blockchain. It doesn't have to be a centralized server to do that. It can be decentralized. I think that's the key. There should be that expectation of, behaving morally and all that, and repercussions if you behave badly, and we don't even have to remake the legal system. We already know what good laws look like. We already have a pretty good legal system. Just implement those same sorts of expectations of behavior into blockchain.
Tommy, you have a lot of strong opinions about this. Obviously, you've been in the space for quite some time. You're building yourself. Walk us through a little bit about what you've been working on personally.
Sure. Well, I've been in blockchain for actively for about 10 years. I originally was a YouTuber. I was just kind of post-college, and just loved blockchain. And actually, I saw Bitcoin go from $10 to $1,000 in 2013. So that 100x gain, I didn't get it. I wasn't active in it. And so there was that first surge in early 2013. And I was watching that. I was on spring break and I was watching that. It's crazy. It was going from like $10, next day $20, next day $30. It was moving. I was like, wow, I've never saw an asset move like that in my life. And then it went up to like 200, and then it like kind of leveled out around 100. And there was sometimes it was like close to 50. So I was like, I'll buy it when it goes to 50. It never did. Like a couple months later, it's blasting off again. Now it's hitting $500, $600, $700, $800 every day. You're checking and seeing it go up. I'm like, wow, I've never seen something like that in my life. And I was pursuing the best investments, looking at real estate, gold and silver, which God bless silver hasn't been anything the whole time. I missed that, but I was like, man, I could have put 10 grand in and been a millionaire. And that's huge as like a, 23-year-old or whatever, would have been a ton of money. So I was like, all right, well, I'm never taking my eyes off this again. I'm going to study this every day. I'm going to be a master of this. That was kind of my, intro into it. Studied every day, started sharing what I learned on YouTube and stuff. That's kind of how I got into it. And then I built up a YouTube following. I got up to about 20,000 people in 2017. And actually, I'll tell you guys, if you guys are a content creator, just never stop. It's one lesson I take. Now I learned like I never should have stopped doing that. I got really into building my company, which is cool because I've done some powerful stuff. But everything in this world is marketing. So that's a big, keep that in mind, you guys. Marketing, content creation, it's like number one. Anyway, but so it was the 4th of July, 2017. I was watching all the Instagram stories on my phone of like 4th of July, and I got this vibe, the USA, we stand for liberty, liberty and justice for all. And I got this message from the universe, from God, whatever you want to call it, basically saying, Tommy, you need to build this blockchain, and you're going to build a blockchain like no one else. And then I made a YouTube video on it like shortly after. And then people started coming and be like, hey, I could help do this, I could help do that. And I'm like, okay, so it begins. And so brick by brick, I started building Energi. And the problem that we actually solved the best in the end wasn't I didn't expect that to be it, but it was the issue of crime. Because we started having users getting scammed, of course, soon after launch, right? Someone starts getting scammed. The impersonators appear in the Discord or the Telegram, faking that they're admins, trying to talk to them. Oh, I could help you. And then they scam them, right? And I'm like, dude, I've been through this a couple times, like a dozen times or so, or maybe more. And I was like, there's no way. How can anyone build a blockchain like this? And actually, as I say that right now, it's baffling to me because all the big blockchains out there, we're still little fish right now, but all those big blockchains out there, you know how many users getting scammed day in, day out? And it's kind of crazy to me that those founders never. I hear what others say, that they say they basically don't take responsibility for it. They're like, oh, this is what blockchain is, and I completely disagree. I completely disagree. There's no leadership is about taking responsibility, and you have two choices. You can say you're not going to take. Oh, it's not my responsibility, or you can say, how do I solve this problem? And I already knew enough about blockchain at the time, studying it every day, you know. So I had kind of a good concept and good visions of the future to realize that the future of blockchain, there's no way this is the future. There's no way. There's no way the future of blockchain is people getting scammed left, right, and center. And it's just got much worse today. Like back then it was bad. Today it's 100 times as bad as it was then. So I was like, okay, let's figure this out. And God bless, I have a great, essentially co-founder I built Energi with, Ryan. He wasn't officially a co-founder. He just started as a volunteer, but for all intents and purposes, he pretty much, is. He's the tech master. I'm not a developer. I'm a visionary. He's the tech master. We got together and like we built this thing, and it's different, right? It's different than what people do, but I just came from a place of like, I don't care what other people are doing. I care about what is actually correct. And I think that takes you have to be a little brave to do that, because even until now, like people are sometimes, again, I got pushed back so many times, decentralization, like, and then that's what made me tune in to be like, what does decentralization really mean? What does it really mean? And that's how I tune into it. And like, decentralization really is a network that can't be shut down. It's not that lack of protection. And so we built these systems that if someone steals an asset, we can have a vote on the network. A 10% vote of the network can freeze a bad actor. And then a 10% vote can drain that bad actor. These are new transactions. We're not rolling back the blockchain. It's a mutable blockchain, just like all the others. And we implemented that. And so that started seeing success. And then I found like there was another hole in the system, which deals with how fast people move assets off your blockchain. That's what we have, like these layers of security. Like I'm looking at where other people are. Everyone's still on level 0. Some people are looking to get to level 1, but we're on level 2 or 3, I'd say. That's where I see security in the space. Again, I did not plan on solving this problem. It just solved it because it is the biggest pain point in the space, and it's crazy to me that today we're the only one who solved that on the blockchain level. But I really hope to see more blockchains do it, because and they're doing it. Ripple just announced their clawback thing. They're moving this direction. A clawback. What is that? They can claw back assets from a thief, from a bad actor. So they're moving in that direction.
You mentioned 10%. Is that enough for it to only be focused on those with malicious intent, or could there be some drawbacks with like actual valid transactions?
We can always like you could do a hard fork and change these figures if you had to. We do hard forks still here and there, upgrading the network. So if we needed to, we could change that. But it's a good number. I think it's a good number. Participation's a little lower than what you might notice that with decentralized voting participation tends to be a little kind of on the low side. So I think 10% is enough. But we could always change it, right? And that's the thing. These things don't have to be set in stone. We can change these. There's time to improve these parameters. The point is, it works. It works at that level. Whether it's 5%, 10%, 20%, you could pick the level, but it works. Oh, and there's people always ask, well, what if a criminal comes and buys up, 10% of coins? Well, that would be a really expensive attack, and then the rest of the network can come and freeze them, and then they just lost that millions of dollars they put in trying to pull off a scam. And then there's, okay, worst case scenario. The worst case scenario, and this is the beautiful thing about blockchain. The worst case scenario, if some bad actor really subjugates the network, you know what you do? You fork them off the network, and now you have a new network. Boom, that's clear of that cancer. That's awesome, So, but people get caught up in like the little minutia. It shuts down all that stuff we deal with day to day.
You say that decentralization is something that you can't fully control, but you do have control over certain things, clearly, right? You could fork in order to make certain changes.
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, really, the main thing you want to be careful of is that no one can shut down the network. That's the most important part of it. And then you can kind of pick the level of governance capabilities you want within there. All these, again, little details of what exactly the fine tuning of the best way to do everything. Besides us, I don't know anyone else who moved in this direction for security, at least. There's other decentralized governance when it comes to contract upgrades or upgrading the blockchain, which we can do as well. But I think these ones kind of miss the big point, which is that of security. So yeah, to be really candid, this is a new space, right? This is like cutting edge of blockchain in a way. Like this avenue really hasn't been pursued by people too much.
Appreciate you fighting the good fight, Tommy. Where can people learn
Thanks.
more about you and Energi and everything else that you're doing?
Well, I'm pretty active on X these days, X formerly Twitter. So Tommy WorldPower. My name WorldPower comes from my alignment of the most powerful things in the world, which is how I found Bitcoin in the first place, back in 2012. So that's how you can find me. I'm on YouTube, same name. More active on X though. So yeah, feel
Uh,
free to reach out, connect. Yeah.
for sure. I'll be sure to include the links in the description. And any parting thoughts for the listeners?
I always say, reminder to myself, always remember to be grateful. So remember to do your gratitude practice today. We are all blessed beyond belief. I always say, I'd rather be alive today as any normal person than be Rockefeller 100 years ago. So with how much we're all blessed. So just remember your blessings and be grateful for blockchain. It's crazy when I see people like who have a bad experience. Oh, I'm going to get out of blockchain. No, you need to be grateful for it. It's life changing. I know there's ups and downs. We all go through it. Just stick with it and let's bring those good vibes and come from a place of having a good heart and just make the world a better place brick by brick. Thanks for having me on too.
Well said, Tommy. Appreciate you coming on and always appreciate the support. You've sent words of encouragement to me to keep building, and that's what I keep doing. So I appreciate you as well. And thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. We'll catch you soon.